I was nearly kidnapped at 14. So this was a few years back, and I was walking home from a friend's house after hanging out at hers after school. It was around 9:30 in summer, so the sun had for the most part set. It was relatively dark, but still bright enough where I could make out the things around me. I was stoned, and I was walking very slowly down the road to my house, which was about a 20-minute walk away from my friends. Majority of my walk was spent on a straight, quiet suburb street that was very familiar to me as I had done this walk plenty of times before. After maybe 5 minutes of walking, I noticed the first and only car to drive past. It was an old beat-up white Honda, which I didn't take much notice of until another few minutes had passed and it drove past me again. Still, I wasn't concerned and continued about my walk, admiring the cracks in the pavement or doing whatever else a stoned 14-year-old does on their walk. Another minute passes and this car drives past again, this time more slowly, and I feel my stomach drop. I couldn't make out who was inside, but I knew something was off. I've always been very timid, so I tried to convince myself it was just paranoia and that I was just being dramatic, until it drives past again about 2 minutes later and parked maybe 10 feet in front of me. As I approach the car, I keep my head down, but I hear a "Hey there," and sure enough, I look up and there was a rough-looking man who you could tell, just from the appearance alone, smelled like stale cigarettes and body odor. They were there sitting in the driver's seat, smiling at me. The lack of teeth and a dirty shirt made this man give off a horrible vibe, so I just gave a little smile back and continued walking. I looked up and noticed that he was driving alongside me, and he asked if I had directions to the closest gas station. I stopped and pointed in the general direction and told him where to go and that it was less than 5 minutes of a drive away, when out of nowhere he just started to laugh. I kinda just stared in confusion and fear as he squinted his eyes at me like he was trying to get a better look at my face. He then said, "I'll take a guess, but I think I can tell from those eyes that you've been smoking pot there, little miss." I kinda just laughed and tried to walk away when he said, "Oi, come back." So I stopped in my tracks. Why I didn't just keep walking is beyond me, but I turned around and he pulls out a rather large bag of weed and asks if I want some. I tell him I'm okay and I have no money, and he said something along the lines of, "I don't need your money, take it." I reassure him that I'm fine and that I don't need it and try to continue walking, but nevertheless, he continued driving alongside me. He then asked if I needed a ride home and tells me it's too dark to be walking alone, which really frightened me. He continues trying to coerce me into his car, and I became more and more unsettled. I began looking for the closest house with the lights on, and after finding one, I tell him that this is my house and good night. I walk up some stranger's driveway and walk straight into their home, where this middle-aged couple are just sitting in the living room and they looked extremely shocked and equally angry. I just started to sob out of shock and relief and apologized profusely. I explained to them what had just happened, and the very kind lady assured me I did the right thing and gave me a ride home. Looking back, I probably should have knocked, but I was scared, under the influence and still a child, and the homeowners were very understanding. This is still one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me, but I'm so glad that I trusted my gut and got away from the man whose intention seemed anything but pure. I still consider myself lucky that I got away. Edit. Thank you for all the positive responses. I'm guessing some of you are wondering whether or not the police were called. They were. They took a statement from me, but because I hadn't remembered the plate number and didn't know what model or year the car was, nothing really came of it. The police were super unhelpful, and while taking my statement, the officer was super unprofessional and was almost yelling at me that I needed to speak up, which made me cry. Keep in mind this was the day after so I was still very shaken up by the whole ordeal, and I've always had a very quiet, shy nature to me, like I had mentioned before. But there was an alert posted on the local school's websites, and the story circled around on the community Facebook page, telling people to keep an eye out and make sure their children were accompanied while outside playing. I'm glad that my story helped potentially keep other children in my community safe, but it was disheartening that they never caught the guy. "3 a.m. Airbnb visitor. My husband and I got married during the level 3 lockdown in New Zealand. We wanted to do something special the night of our wedding, so we got an Airbnb in the harbour near where we live. The place was the back house of someone else's house, and kind of in near a forest. It was also pretty small, 1 room and a bathroom. We had just gotten married, so we were acting very in love that night, for the lack of a better word. We also had the windows open because we believed that we were the only ones in the area and that it was very remote. When we decided to go to sleep, my husband decided that since we were in New Zealand, there was no need to lock the door, and like an idiot, I went along with this. We go to sleep, and a few hours later, at about 3 a.m, there's a distinct loud knocking on the wall that our head is laying against. There was another 7 locks spaced out evenly. It was that kind of sound that, to me, was deliberately trying to wake us up. I shrieked, and then my husband looked out the windows for movement. There wasn't any movement or sound after, just extremely still. What's also weird is the Airbnb had motion-sensing lights on the opposite side of where the knocking came from. It was almost like whoever it was knew not to set off the lights. Also, because I think people ask, I know in my gut this knock came from a person and not an animal or wild animal, etc. After a few hours of being terrified, we didn't hear anything else for the rest of the night. The next day I asked the Airbnb host about it, and they said they didn't know anything and were genuinely sorry. They even let us stick around past checkout to enjoy the view a little longer. To be honest, I genuinely don't think it was them. I know this isn't as creepy as some of the other stories in the sub, but I still wanted to share my experience because, well, I don't understand why. Why would someone want to just wake us up, especially if the door was unlocked? A part of me wants to think it was some homeless person looking for a place to sleep, but then why would they try to wake us up? Why not just peek in the window that we had stupidly left open? Another theory is they were doing something perverted and watching us earlier in the night. Again, though, why would they need to wake us up 4 hours later? I appreciate any and all speculations because frankly these questions keep me up at night. A dark tunnel. Okay, so this just happened. I'm on mobile, so sorry for the formatting. In New Zealand, we have a lot of walks, and sometimes I like to just drive somewhere and go for a hike into the bush. Normally, I just walk to a point, turn back, and go home. But tonight, I decided to walk the entire track. This specific track goes from a visitor center at the top of the hill, then down a hill is the track which takes you past a large old abandoned railway that was once used to show off glowworms and is now just a rusting wreck. I decided to walk down the track. It was about 4:30 and it was starting to get a bit dark, so I thought I would explore a bit, then walk back to my car. About 20 meters from the main station there is an old tunnel used by the train. This tunnel has been abandoned for coming up 3 years now, so off I go into the tunnel with my little lantern. This tunnel would not have been more than 500 meters long. While I was walking over, the sound of my wet slipping footsteps, I swear I could hear someone following me, breathing on me. I felt the hairs on my neck stand up, and I stop in my tracks and swing around with my lantern. Nothing. Just a small ball of light from the tunnel opening. So I start walking again, and the feeling returns, when over my own breath and slapping of my footsteps, I heard something. No, someone. A man with a deep voice. I heard in a dangerous whisper, "Get out." You didn't need to tell me twice. I felt my large frame running through this small tunnel designed for a tiny train. And I hear the footsteps behind me. The light of the mouth of the tunnel is getting larger and larger. I feel the security of the daylight sort of wash over me. Twist. I tripped over and fell down on my stomach while still in the tunnel. I felt this presence near me. I tried to get up, but my shoulder was killing me, and my legs have decided that they don't want to work anymore. I felt that I knew that whatever this was didn't want me there anymore. I got up, covered in mud, all down my front, and finally made it into the safety of daylight. I must say, me walking up the railway, it must have looked like some awful extra from The Walking Dead. I reached the small station and managed to sit myself down on a long, defunct station, sitting there trying to stretch out my arm so that it won't hurt anymore. Then, stretching my legs, I looked up to my left, and standing on the platform, as if waiting for the train, was a guy, dressed in brown overalls and a white shirt, looking dirty and disheveled. I looked back down at my foot and turned back to look at the guy, and to my utter shock, he wasn't there anymore. I promise you I'm a big frame guy, and I have never ran so fast in my entire life. Up the hill, through the thicket of the forest, and back to the safety of the car park. I'm now sitting in the car park trying to process what the hell had happened, and in case anyone was wondering, yes, I am able to take photos of this place, as it's not hard to access, but I will only if I get prompted. Never go to the beach at night. This story takes place about a week ago. Myself and a friend had decided to go to the beach, as we both couldn't sleep. So we arrived at the beach, which will remain unnamed, but for reference, it's on the western coast of New Zealand. Our story starts when we were driving out to the beach. The road is a long and windy road. I have driven this road hundreds of times before, both with and without someone in the vehicle with me. I started getting this weird feeling in the pit of my stomach. As we drove past the usually closed park on the right, which was open, it has never been open in the 15 or so years that I've been coming to this place. Now the time was around 11:30 p.m. We both commented on it, but shrugged it off at the thought of the amazing photos we would be able to take with the last night of the full moon. As we arrived at the beach, we parked our car into the unit car park further down the beach. Having grown up around this particular beach, I'm very confident when it comes to where I am, so we locked the car and head down the sandy path to the black and white stained surface of the beach. The moonlight casting a creepy glow over everything while providing light for us to walk. We start to head east down the beach towards a large cave situated right at the end. This cave is hidden by a huge sand dune that is, I imagine, accumulated sand from the years of wind whipping at it. This was our destination. At the top of this dune gives a very unique view of the water. As we head towards this dune, we hear and smell the crackling of burning wood nearby. In this country, it is strictly against the law to have fires on or anywhere near this beach. We noticed a small fire sitting off to the right around about 150 meters from where we were. I noticed from the corner of my eye that there didn't appear to be anyone around this fire, just a fire burning randomly in the tall, flammable grass next to the dunes. My friend, who we will call Casey, pointed out the fire to me, and we both shrugged it off as some teenagers may be having some drinks, even though there was no sound around except the cracking of the fire and the slight wind of the beach. About 100 meters down the beach, we encounter the first of the night, shall we say, issues. I see a man sitting in the middle of the sand just staring out at the water. I didn't initially think anything of it, but upon further inspection, the guy was just staring out into the water, apparently not aware of the two people calling out to him. Strange, but hey, people are weird, right? So we get to the dune and climb up the 20 or so meters of sand to the top. Just for reference, the black cave mouth was to our back as we snapped picture after picture of the beach and the water, all under the moonlit, clear, starry sky. Suddenly from behind us comes a strange growling sound, like a dog, but it was fuzzy, like a human pretending to be a dog. I'll be honest, by this time I was ready to go get the hell out of here, and I looked at Casey and said, I have enough nope in my life. I'm going back to the car. As we were descending down the sand dune, the sound got louder and louder. It was like it was following us, and every step we took made it move closer. I'll admit, I am not the fittest of people, and neither is my friend, but the adrenaline kicked in, and at the moment, I grabbed her hand and we booked it down, all the way down the beach. We only got about 500 meters before the weird, staring guy came back into view. This time, he was not staring at the water, but he was staring at us. My mother always told me if something doesn't feel right, it more than likely is not right. I don't know what it was about this man, but his eyes looked menacing. As we ran towards him, though, he started fucking barking at us. As we passed, he got up on all fours like a dog with his ass in the air and chased us. I have never been so scared of anything in my life. As I ran towards what I thought was the path we came down, I grabbed my friend's hand and guided her up the path. The growling and the barking man had not followed us up this path. I don't know why, if it was he didn't see us go in there, or if they were just done fucking with us. However, spoiler, this path led us deeper into the bush beside the beach. We had walked using a single phone flashlight to guide our way. My foot grazed something, not sand or grass, but more solid. As I shone my light down, I saw it was a chewed shoe that looked like it was abandoned in a hurry. As we fumbled through the bush, tall grass, I could see the road. It was so close, but so far. As we moved towards the road, we heard someone yell, "What the fuck?" and shone a flashlight at us. It was someone camping in the tall grass. I have never been so happy to see another human being in my life. I said we were coming back from the beach and got lost. What's up with the guy who's barking on the beach? The guy told us that he hadn't heard anything and to fuck off before he smashed us. We made it back to the road and realized that we were still about 1 kilometer away from the car by road, but only 20 minutes by beach. At this time, the internal argument of my lazy self started. Agonizingly, we sluggishly walked to the road, not the way we wanted to go, but we were not going to go anywhere near that damn beach. When I get back to my car, I noticed that a part of my trim had been lifted and it looked like someone had been chewing on it. I have decided that I will never go wandering on that beach at night ever again. So hey, creepy guy sitting on the beach, piss off. Help. You have to drive us to the hospital. I'm a long-time lurker on this sub and thought that I would share the story of the time I foolishly let 2 people into my car. This was about 11 years ago now, but I still remember it vividly. I was 18 and was driving along a quiet residential road in my hometown in New Zealand. I was on my way back to pick up my friend because I'd brought us tickets to the Angelina Jolie spy movie, Salt. My first poor decision of the day. There was a school on the road, so I had to go the speed limit, which was quite low. As I was ambling along, I noticed an older man, mid-50s, standing in the middle of the road up ahead, frantically waving his arms. There were no other cars around, and with no idea of what else to do, I pulled over and let my window down. For the first time, I noticed a woman sitting on the sidewalk, kinda hunched over. The man approached in a panic and said, "Help, you need to help drive us to the hospital. My wife needs medical assistance immediately." I looked over at her, and she was just kind of rocking. I instantly pulled out my phone and began dialing the emergency number, starting to feel panicked myself. He saw my phone and said, "No, there honestly isn't time. You have to help us now. She needs to get to the hospital." In hindsight, I should have just held my ground and called an ambulance. However, I knew the hospital was relatively close. Also, I didn't want to be responsible for this rocking woman's death, so being young and foolish and a nerd to the relative safety of New Zealand, I unlocked my car doors. The man helped the woman into the back seat and hopped in the front. They were relatively normally dressed, but I now noticed that he was holding an amorphous black trash bag. The moment they got in, the woman stopped rocking and sat bolt upright, staring at me in the rear vision mirror. I was shocked. Instantly, the man just said, "Drive." I got to the end of the road and signaled right, being the direction of the hospital, and the man relatively firmly and now completely calm said, "No, left, take us to suburb. About 10 minutes drive away." "But you have to go to the hospital," I asked, my voice about 10 octaves higher than usual. Silence. My whole body went numb, and I started driving towards the suburb, somewhat absently noting to myself that there is a large police station in that suburb. As I'm driving completely disembodied, the woman in the back suddenly says, "No shit. I know everything about you." "What?" I asked, as my testicles literally ascended into my stomach. "Yes, I know you're an Aquarius." She kinda cackled after she said it. Creepy as fuck. Anyways, joke's on her, I'm Sagittarius. Regardless, I agreed, and thankfully her speaking jolted me out of my autopilot. I pulled over and said that you need to get out here. Neither of them moved. "It's just down the road," he said, and kind of indicated towards his black trash bag. Weapons, guns are very rare in New Zealand, so my mind didn't go there, but I just felt like something in that bag was intended as a threat. I kept driving, sweating and on the verge of tears until we reached the suburb. I pulled over immediately near the station and said, "Get out," firmly. They didn't move, and the man said, quite deadpan, "Take us to suburb." Another 10-minute drive. Thankfully, I finally saw some sense and just took the keys out of the car, getting out of it and maintaining a distance. They sat there for like 2 minutes, which honestly felt like an hour. Eventually, they opened the doors and finally got out. The woman was holding a book she had picked up from the back seat, Brave New World, which I had just written my final exam on. "Can I have this?" she asked. "Yes, just go," I shouted. And with that, they walked off quietly down the road. I got back in the car, shaking, and drove to my friend's house, who was initially annoyed I might have made us late to Salt. When I told him what had happened, he gave me a quick bro cuddle, and we called the police. They took my details and promised to look out for them and make sure that they were okay and not up to anything nefarious. I calmed down after speaking to the police, although when I was halfway into Salt, I remembered with a sudden feeling of absolute dread that I had written my full name on the inside of the cover of Brave New World. I never heard from the cops or saw the old couple again. I have no idea what they intended, if anything. Perhaps they were just grifters after a free ride, but in any case, it was extremely creepy. And I still think about the cackling woman with my book from time to time. One lesson with a driving instructor who was quite sly, creepy, and dishonest. I am a female in her 20s and recently had a driving lesson with a male instructor who was maybe in his late 20s and of Indian descent. This happened in Auckland, New Zealand. There could be others who he taught who experienced similar things, so this could help them recognize him and help them feel less alone and confused. I only had one lesson, and I think there is a low to medium level of creepiness. I expect some people will think that he wasn't creepy, but just friendly or flirty, one definition of creepy, causing an unpleasant feeling of fear or unease. You're entitled to your opinion, but remember, I had the personal experience, and I'm not sharing everything that happened in detail. A note about the experience, what this will cover: repetitive touching, introspection, self-explanations, excessive compliments, time demands, lying on his website, narcissistic, grooming, advice. The discomfort started before I started the car. He patted me on the shoulder, which I suppose could be considered reassuring when he saw I was nervous, but throughout the lesson, he would place his hand on top of mine to emphasize a point, and the touchometer increased to 4 or 5. I appeared neutral or unresponsive every time. I never smiled encouragingly, nor did I move my hand towards him. I'm sure he wouldn't have grasped the hands of a male student multiple times. Upon reflection later, I suspect that him asking me how I am at the start, then touching me on the shoulder, was a calculated move that he has done before. It's the perfect opportunity to accept an invitation to do so, and I have to admit, I kind of admire that slyness. Why didn't I say something? There were several reasons. I didn't want to seem overly emotional, and I was scared of offending or upsetting him and making him become cold and harsh again, as he did at the start when I didn't follow an instruction correctly. I didn't want to cause tension because I was planning on spending the last 4 hours with him alone in a small space, and I had a test coming up and I really needed his help and advice. And if he took it badly, it would lead me to becoming more anxious, which would have probably affected my concentration in driving. I didn't want to cause an accident, of which I would hear about way too much on the news. I also didn't possess enough confidence or assertiveness to speak up during those moments. He was acting like such a nice guy, so overall it didn't seem like a good idea to speak up. Near the start, he asked me more than a few personal questions in quick succession. I didn't want to waste time and was uncomfortable, so I answered them shortly, thinking he would pick up on the hint and stop asking. He didn't, until I turned the questions on him, something I probably should have done earlier. I was curious to see how far he would push. Throughout the lesson, he was often charming and sweet-sounding. He called me baby a few times. Come on, baby. Being effusive when I got something rather simple right. Would he say something like that to me if I was, say, an older man? He also called me a smart girl 3 times, at pretty random, uncalled for times. I did awkwardly thank him once, but mainly just stared back, emotionless, feeling that they were forced, insincere in all the context, and probably designed to manipulate. I made a comment about it being hot in the car, and he was like, in a teasing voice, my other students say that too. To that I made a half-amused chuckle sound, but was really so uncomfortable, and changed the topic. I can sense something very uneasy, and I feel he was trying hard to impress me by repetitively expressing similar feelings to me about the test, talking a lot about himself. He was keen to appear to share the same thoughts as me, e.g., I would disagree with or have another perspective on something that he had said, and he would, like a flash of lightning, agree with me enthusiastically, even if it contradicted the statement he was expressing earlier. He also wanted to meet me 15 to 20 minutes earlier than our scheduled 2-hour lessons, which was plenty of time, I thought. And the second time it was more like a demand and not a request. I also observed grandiose statements, a lot of presumptuous and a tendency to be melodramatic and to be quite dismissive. After the lesson, I re-examined his website. He was dishonest or misleading about several things, e.g. the landline number didn't work and he constantly gave the impression that there was more than one person in his business. We was used quite regularly. Other red flags: there was no last name mentioned. I found out that the name he goes by isn't even his real name. There was no about page, no pictures of him, but oh so many pictures of his female students behind the wheel. Furthermore, on another website a person complained about his driving. It was precise, calm and rational. His response was simply denying everything, talk as if he was defending someone else, arguing that he was wrong in every account, and then belittling him. A nice move, I suppose. I suspect he is a narcissist, or at least has narcissistic tendencies. All of these things led me to feel intensely uncomfortable about him, and afraid of how else he would cross the line of professionalism. So I cancelled the next lesson. I was reading about grooming behavior, and it was a bit scary to see how relevant it was to my case. Example: pays too much attention, gives too many compliments, demands too much of your time, shares too much information, swears you to secrecy about something. Well, the last one didn't apply, but all the others did. I know that this experience wasn't very creepy compared to the other experiences on this website, but I have a feeling it would have increased had I continued the lessons. I'm sure there are others who have had similar experiences to mine, maybe not in this context, and hopefully this will help them understand that things are more, or help others to prepare and understand future encounters. So, I can't end it like this. I have to give you some advice to help others who may face or be facing similar situations. Trust your feelings. Don't dismiss them. Listen to your intuition, especially if you're being given mixed signals and you feel a bit confused. I didn't feel too badly about him until I really analyzed and processed it all. Be careful of too many compliments, of verbal seduction, and of those who seem to radiate truth and openness. It could be that it is truly who they are, but then again, it could be a way of earning your trust to later abuse you. Be prepared for anything, even the worst case scenarios. How? Have your phone nearby. Learn self-defense. Make sure you can sprint long distances if you need to. Anything can happen, and I think it's better to be safe than sorry. Better to be over-prepared rather than heedless. Anyway, thank you for reading, and if you have any related experiences or ideas with regards to defending or protecting yourself in relevant situations, please feel free to share. Hello everyone, Grimm here. Thank you all for making it to the end of this video. If you liked today's video, please remember, like, subscribe, share, do all those things that help a small channel like mine out. I appreciate it. Outside of all of that, New Zealand is my hometown, well, country. I have lived here my entire life. I haven't left New Zealand as of yet. And I want to say this as someone from this country. As always, this is not me trying to say that New Zealand is dangerous or not to come and enjoy your time here. It's just bad things happen everywhere. There's a darkness in every light. So, enjoy yourself, enjoy the stories, and be safe wherever you are. As always, look after yourself. Have a good night or day. And I'm Grimm, and I'm, well, signing off.